It's hard to contain your excitement when you get something you've really wanted. Like the gold standard in automotive protection, WeatherTech floor liners. With deep sculpted channels and laser measured for total protection in the front, back, and even up the sides.
Dad, you're going viral.
What? WeatherTech me.
So don't be shy, enjoy. Order your premium American-made products at WeatherTech.com.
Whatever you drive, however you drive. AMSOIL specially engineers lubricants to maximize power, performance, and protection in your vehicles, so you can work hard and play hard with confidence. Order online at amsoil.com.
It's a hot weekend in Texas for some sports car racing. How will the drivers cope with track temperatures well into the triple digits? We're about to find out as we let the horses run free at the world-famous Circuit of the Americas. Let's get ready to watch round 2 of the Ford Mustang Cup Parnelli Cup Championship. Hi, I'm Joey Atterbury, and joining me in the booth today is going to be Joe Peak along with sports car racing driver Ashley Freiberg. This is the first race of the weekend for the Ford Mustang field, but we can go ahead and take a look at that track map because we are here located in Austin, Texas, just outside of downtown. And COTA is known as one of the world-famous racetracks that we've got here in North America. It is an FIA Grade 1 facility. It is filled with elevation, and it will be the most mentally and physically demanding racetrack the series visits all season. A couple areas to note. Turn number 1, Big Red. It is always very, very busy on lap number 1. It is very wide on entry, and it really narrows up coming out of the corner. All the way down to the other end of the track map, turn number 11 is very important because it leads you out onto that back straightaway, which, of course, has a huge brake zone at the end where the cars are right now. So let's go ahead and roll through our starting grid out here for, the Miles Cup race. I kind of messed that up a little bit here for round number 2. Craig Capaldi, your pole sitter on row number 1 in that number 68. Will Lucas is going to be joining next to him in the second place position. Cale Buell starting in 3rd with Chase Cochran in that 4th spot. Walter Bobko starting in 5th with John Strauss in 6th. On row number 7, we'll have Andrew Hortz as well as Nick Smither, and that's going to be rounding out our 8-car field here at Circuit of the Americas. Well, Joe Peak, I've got you here in the broadcast booth with us. What are we going to expect for our first race?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting up at the very front because Will Lucas finds himself behind somebody at the start. We didn't get to see that back at NOLA, so I imagine he's going to have to push hard, and Craig's going to be doing his darndest to keep him behind.
Well, they're rounding through what is turn number 19 out here on the racetrack and coming up to what is turn number 20, Andretti corner. So we are going to get going with a green flag racing here momentarily. It is all in the hands of Craig Capaldi, leading them to that start-finish line at a nice pace car speed. Just kind of creeping along, waiting. Some of the cars maybe getting a little bit out of line further in the back. You got to be careful about that. And now Craig stands on the loud pedal, accelerating up towards turn number 1. Big Red, as it's known. We see Will Lucas on the outside, already defensive from our leader, diving towards apex. Are we going to see too wide as we get through the entire shot? And now they're going to be coming out of turn number 1 and down the hill towards 2.
Does look like we got through that one pretty clean as all 8 cars managed to exit out of turn 1. Capaldi still in the lead up at the front. But look at that. It is Cale Buell who is now in 2nd position. Will Lucas losing out on that P2. So now he has to pass 2 cars if he wants to come away with the win today, Joey.
And these cars are quite heavy around this Circuit of the Americas. Remember, well over 3,000 pounds. So these drivers are really going to have to be hustling the car up on the steering wheel, really managing the lateral slip that they get through these Yokohama tires and putting all of that power down to the ground.
As we ride on board down into the braking with Chase Cochran. There's a move down to the inside. Lucas going to try and get that second place back, but it looks like a nice cutback from Cale Buell. Although he's not going to be able to get back ahead of him by the exit of the corner. He will have better launch here, Ashley, heading towards turn 12.
Yeah, it's tricky with turn 11 there. The course gets really, really wide, and it's very easy to want to turn in super early there, which can hurt your exit onto this long straightaway into turn 12. But he made it work, and he made it stick, so we'll see if he can start to pull away now.
They exit out of 12. Yep, it was a well-executed move by Will Lucas. Capaldi doing what he can to try and stretch away at this stage. But we saw, 80-degree temperatures thereabouts back in Louisiana, Joey. This is a whole different ball game out here.
Yeah, it's about 95, 97 degrees ambient temperature. I mentioned track temperature well into the triple digits, over 125 degrees out here in Austin, Texas. That means these drivers are really going to be working. And you got to remember, they have a big old V8 in the front end of these Mustangs, so you have to manage that weight transfer, manage that brake pedal pressure, and just kind of baby this thing along. Sometimes when you actually drive it slower, it goes faster.
Craig Capaldi going to lead lap 1, 40 minutes plus a lap this race for the drivers. And as they cross the line, it does look like Lucas still our leader in the Dark Horse category. Capaldi technically leading the Dark Horse Legends. And boy, he has a lot of space between himself and John Strauss, who's the next one down in the 14 car.
Yeah, there we see the number 4 of Chase Cochran round up and over turn number 1. He has given chase to that white and green car of Cale Buell, a local out here. It's pretty fun to see all of the SEMA cars that's out there in the paddock showing off a lot of that Ford stuff.
Exactly. They brought some toys and some fun little things to show off to everybody. And it's certainly been entertaining to see what all that they've got out here in the paddock this weekend. Meanwhile, taking a look at Capaldi and Lucas, it does look like they're starting to pull away from Cale a little bit, although it doesn't seem like Will is gaining on Craig yet.
Not quite yet. So if we kind of rewind about a month back to NOLA Motorsports Park, where we had the first 2 races of this Ford Mustang Cup Championship. Of course, the Miles Cup here is race 1 of the weekend, and then we have the Parnelli Cup Championship as the race tomorrow on Sunday afternoon. But Will really dominated NOLA Motorsports Park. He won by a commanding victory in that Saturday race, and then on the Sunday race, he really even extended that, made some changes to the car, and I think won by about 25 seconds. So right now, Craig Capaldi in that white number 68, a little bit of a redemption for him.
Can he rebound back after that and show Will Lucas how it's done here? So we see our top 4 work their way into the stadium section. I'm keeping an eye on that timing tower because it seems like Andrew Hordes and Walter Bobko, have been quite close back there for 7th place. Hordes will be one to watch out for. We saw so much improvement over the course of the first weekend from Andrew, just finding incredible pace.
That's actually a really good point, and I think that's one of the main points of this series is really to try to take these semi-professional drivers and hone their skills, maybe even work them up to a GT4 car, because that is the kind of the natural ladder progression that Ford has going from the Dark Horse R into the GT4, into the GT3, and like we heard Chris Ward say back at NOLA Motorsports Park, maybe eventually find him in a Le Mans program.
Exactly. Obviously, Ford's going to be trying to dip their toes back into prototypes soon, so that'll be fun to witness and see if any of these drivers could someday get up there, Joey.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a slip-up up there at the top of the hill for Craig Capaldi at turn number 1. Just kind of seemed to step out from the back end of the car, and then he kind of had a little bit of an overcorrection, but thankfully was able to catch that tank slapper before it got too bad and too out of hand out there. And I had mentioned these are some big old V8s in the front end of these cars. I want to bring in Ashley. You have driven a ton of sports cars in your day. When was the last big front engine V8 car you drove?
Oh man, I would probably say 2016. It's been a really long time. So yeah, it's definitely a different driving style, but I mean, ultimately all the different driving styles make you a better driver as a whole. So the more variety you can have driving different cars, the faster you're going to be. So this battle up front here is definitely getting a bit tight here. So we'll see how this goes as the race ends.
Yeah, some of these drivers a little bit new, so haven't had a whole variety of experience yet, but plenty have been in the cockpit of sports cars, of tin tops, so they do know their way around these rear-wheel drive machines. Does look a little bit closer now, down to about 4/10 we're seeing on the tower on the left-hand side, so Lucas just kind of edging and creeping his way up to the rear of the 68.
Another factor to consider, these cars, remember, they are an H-pattern gearbox. That means the driver is using all 3 pedals, gas, brake, and clutch today to get around Circuit of the Americas. It is not one of these sequential shift transmissions. They're having to do it the old-fashioned way, and then, of course, no traction control in these cars. And I think that in these Texas temperatures, you really have to be careful of that right foot. If you stand on it too much, you can easily spin up those tires.
No doubt. I'm sure coming through that stadium section we just saw is difficult with the H-pattern gearbox. Capaldi showing a few cracks in the armor now.
These cars are heavier than, call it a small touring car. So you got to be kind of used to the weight and kind of used to slinging these things around. And turn number 19, it is so fast out here that you can easily kind of overcharge that corner. And something that I'm seeing out of Will Lucas right now that I typically see out of hot days is getting some clean air to the front end.
Ah, that's a good point. I wondered about that, why he was ducking out from the slipstream, but that definitely makes sense. Just try to cool the engine, cool yourself, I'm sure, as well, having to follow behind Capaldi. The other thing you'll notice is these cars with these long straightaways, I love the sound of these Ford Mustangs, Joey.
They definitely sound nice when they go rumbling by our commentary booth out here on the front straightaway. And you're right, it is a wonderful sound to hear out there on the racetrack. And we've been watching a lot of racing here at Circuit of the Americas. And all the race cars out here have their own little quirks and bits. But you're right, the V8 sounds pretty cool.
Just really is a low guttural roar as it builds up its speed. This is much, much closer. Lucas going to show himself coming down into 11, then getting back to the racing line once again. He's really trying to put the pressure on at this stage, still with 31 minutes left to go on the clock, plus a lap, of course. And again, staying out of the toe of Capaldi, just not wanting to get that hot air on the front of the 34. But, of course, that will cost him coming down the back straightaway.
Let's see about the performance in the brake zones. Now, all of the drivers have definitely raved about the performance of the brakes of these Dark Horse Rs. So I think if we're looking for confidence, it is definitely all in the brake pedal pressure. You can pretty much stand on those things, and it will bring it to a grinding halt.
Yeah, the braking power is something the drivers have often been touting from what time we've gotten to chat with them about these cars. Some have already raced them. Of course, this is a feeder series for the Mustang Challenge. The Cup is just starting this year to act as a way for drivers to kind of dip their toes before they jump up into the Challenge Series. But there are a few drivers that tried to give it a go last year, decided that this maybe would be more their speed before they go back up a step to that Challenge Series racing with IMSA. But around the track we go again to tick off another lap, watching with Chase Cochran, and seems to be just kind of holding behind and shadowing John Strauss here.
Yeah, it's just kind of watch from his in-car view here. You get a nice shot of the H-pattern gearbox. Went from second up to third here on the front straightaway and then still accelerating up into fourth gear. Let's see if he gets up into fifth right about start-finish. Let's pick out a brake marker on the right side of the racetrack. Looks about the 200. Stand hard on those brakes, roll it through the apex. I mentioned the slower you drive these big heavy cars, actually the faster that they go. As soon as you start really getting up on the wheel, the car just doesn't like to be driven like that. You have to do what the car wants, and sometimes it's nice, gentle movements.
I love seeing this in-car footage here. But the old school racer in me loves to see a good H pattern, and you have to do that heel-toe downshifting as well. So it definitely adds a whole different level of skill. And I think ultimately, in the long run, these cars will make you a better driver, having to manage a lot more behind the wheel.
I'm sure once they get to a paddle shifter car, it's going to feel like night and day, and a lot less to be focusing on out there. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's really going to sharpen them as we get a nice little battle between, it looks like, Bobco and Smither, and we've got Andrew Hordes not too far behind them. So this is 6th, 7th, and 8th.
And remember, that third car in line, that purple car, was the driver that you were mentioning out there. And it seems like there's going to be a move down here into what is turn number 11. Of course, that's the 58 of Smither letting that car by. And seems like now it's just going to kind of follow in that slipstream down the back straightaway here. I think that red car is, in fact, the 14 of John Strauss. Just kind of rocketing down here.
That is Bobco, I believe, that made that pass on Smither there. So that's for 6th place. And also up at the upper left, Lucas for a brief while was ahead of Capaldi. It is swapped back once again. So it's gotten close enough that Lucas is now given a few tries, but it seems to have gone awry that time.
This is through that technical stadium section of, call it 13, 14, then approach this really tight left-hander of turn number 15. You see all of these Ford, Mustang, Dark Horse Rs kind of following each other through the racing line. They're not quite as nimble on the slower parts and slower sections to really change that racing line, so you have to set up from it from the beginning.
And there we get confirmation that it is Capaldi still leading ahead of Lucas. I wonder, Joey, if maybe he, because it swapped on our timing tower, so maybe the sector ended and he had managed to get the nose ahead under braking but couldn't quite keep it ahead.
Certainly a possibility. So if we go back to our first weekend of the year back at NOLA Motorsports Park, now these drivers are in different classes. However, Craig Capaldi did not take an overall win, right? He took his class win. It was Will Lucas that took the overall wins in both of those races. So I think that Craig, seeing that car in the rearview mirror, it might give him a little bit of confidence, that little bit of push to keep going.
Definitely something that I think he desires on this one. Doesn't want to just be the winner in class. He wants to be that winner overall in this field. A little bit farther away this time, down to the braking of turn 11. So not seeing a lunge happening for Lucas this time by. This is the important corner, and immediately switching across to the middle of the track. Capaldi just trying to keep from Lucas getting in those tire tracks.
So I think I may be reading into this maybe a little bit too much, but Craig is kind of taking the middle of the road down the front straightaway, and so that prevents Will Lucas to kind of take that middle road down into the brake zone. It seems like they're just trying to get some really fresh air to the front end of these Mustangs, keep them nice and cool out there, but if you can't sit in the slipstream to really close it up, what's the best way to defend? Well, let's drive down the middle of the racetrack.
Just sets himself up ahead of time to prevent any sort of actions. That's one of the things that they are told in the drivers' meeting, is that they consider blocking a reactionary move. So if he immediately goes to that center, well, then they can't really consider him having done any sort of blocking there if Lucas tries to go at it. So this time by almost a full second between the pair of them. I'm honestly impressed here, Joey, the way that Capaldi has held Lucas off for this long.
Agreed. I think that Will Lucas was the class of the field. It didn't matter which session it was when our opening championship rounds happened. But here at COTA, it's a little bit of a different story, too, because Craig Capaldi does have experience here in Austin, Texas, while Will Lucas, this is actually his first time in competition here, so it could just be an experience level difference, too.
That's a good point. That's another thing that comes with being some of these drivers who are new to professional racing, Ashley. I imagine learning a new track is always its own deal.
Yeah, especially this track. It's 20 corners, and it's also super technical. Each corner isn't isolated from turn 1 down to turn 11. They are all interconnected. So your car placement is really crucial. And it's a lot of balancing with the pedals, as balancing the car, where you're loading the weight on each tire, where the tire is being placed. You can see these cars straddling those orange curbs in the middle. You don't want to really hit those curbs with your tire because it could move the entire car over and off the line, which can put you off for the rest of the sector in this track. So it's just super crucial to take this type of track and learn it piece by piece and really work your way up to speed here.
And I mean, that's telling there, looking at the stats as we ride on board with Cochran. Minimum speed through the S's at 55 miles an hour. And that's in a car that doesn't really have any aero to speak of on it. This is a very, very simple car that our course are intended to teach these drivers how to drive them with the mechanical grip. And yeah, Joey, they clearly have that mechanical grip.
It's going back to what Ashley said with the H-pattern gearbox, which we're getting a good shot of here with this in-car shot with Chase Cochran, I believe, going down this back straightaway here. So the other thing I like about the car is actually how much it moves around. Sometimes people see that a heavier sports car isn't quite as nimble, but trust me, these Mustangs handle extremely well. I have a lot of seat time in the various chassis leading up to this Dark Horse R. You just have to understand the equipment underneath you, and that really applies for anything. If it's a go-kart, if it's a Ford Mustang Dark Horse R, if it's a GT3 Mustang, you just have to understand the equipment and what it can and can't do, and then go out there and apply that.
Switching through the triple apexer once again, still giving chase. Again, Cochran behind Strauss. That is not 4 points paying position. Strauss on the second spot for Legends, and then Cochran on the third spot for Dark Horse class drivers. So both of them on the podium currently, but maybe looking for that overall position. Definitely looking like a good couple corners there, as that seems much closer coming down the main straight here for Cochran.
You see the top speed almost 130 miles an hour before they jump on the brakes right here. A little bit wide from the car directly in front, but unfortunately Chase kind of bounced it up and over that apex curve of turn number 1. And when we're talking about drive off of the corner, you need to have both of those wheels on the ground to provide the maximum amount of traction. That's what you're looking for.
Getting ever closer to that white machine in front of him. Cochran making sure that Strauss can't make any little hiccups out there as they come up through the S's section towards the top of the hill. This is where it slows down up at the very top of turn 9. And ooh, definitely a much better entry there for the bright green car of Chase Cochran as he closes in another few car lengths.
Let's see about the brake zone heading down into what is turn number 11 here. You see the elevation change in the bright green car. Taking a look down to the inside. Is room going to be given from the 14? Yes, and it looks like it's going to be a drag race coming off.
Ooh, that drag race already firmly going to Chase Cochran as he pulls ahead, but now he gives the slipstream to Strauss. Can Strauss strike back at him to get that 4th overall right back into his hands? He is staying in the tire tracks, but I fear it might not be enough by the time they hit the braking here for turn 12. Nicely done by Chase Cochran to move him up a spot.
It's a well-executed pass just down into that brake zone towards the apex of turn number 11, and then now one of the more important things is that once you execute the pass, you actually have to run away, right? You can't just let the competitor get right on by you, so you have to go out there, hit your marks. This is exiting turn number 15, accelerate up through this very, very long triple apex right-hander. There you see the first apex. They'll tighten it back down to the second apex, kind of let it feed out its way through the rest of the corner, and then rapidly approach turn number 19. So tough. Oh, a little bit out wide there, but thankfully was able to correct the slide. Nice car control.
Last lap was Chase's personal best in the race. Let's see what it is this time. Of course, he had to make that pass, so not expecting it to be quicker. No, it's about a 28.3. However, Cale Buell ahead of him by, I think it was something like 16 seconds, was quicker by about 7/10 the previous lap. So I'm not sure if we'll see Chase run him down, but you never know. If we get a full course yellow, that'll bunch things up.
One driver that is running another down is actually our second place car of Will Lucas. Has closed the gap to Craig Capaldi over the last 2 laps. It was 1.1 seconds, and now I'm seeing it's down to 0.4 of a second, and in Sector 1 alone, Will Lucas took out another 0.2 from our leader, so he is starting to make this mid-race charge.
Maybe the car coming back to him now. Could have just overheated the tires for a little bit there in the mid-race, trying to fight with Craig. There you see the distance between the two cars, trying to hover all the way to the outside. Will Lucas looking for that clear air on the back straightaway, down into the braking of turn 12. It's at 0.4 of a second last time they crossed one of the timing lines. What's it going to look like after here?
I gotta say, Craig Capaldi being a little bit cheeky going down that back straightaway right there, making his car as wide as possible so Will Lucas really couldn't follow in that slipstream, and a big, huge wag of the tail really from both of our leaders through that stadium section, but it still seems to be like that multicolored number 34 sitting in that second place that is starting to ramp up the pressure, now only about a car length and a half behind.
Certainly saw a turning right to go left for Will Lucas there coming through turn 13. Doesn't want to chew those tires up, especially since they still have those 18 minutes plus a lap left. But he is much tighter to the apex there, Joey.
Yeah, he's got through turn number 19 pretty good and really opens up the radius here of turn number 20. Let's see about putting the power down. Both of them all the way off of that exit curb, and yeah, only about one car length back from Will Lucas, but we can't still see him. He's not able to follow directly behind our leader, so the slipstream not in huge effect, and here comes a launch down towards turn number 1. Can he get the car stopped, or does he overshoot the corner? Craig Capaldi's going to try the over-under.
He's managed to get beside him, and he's in front down through turn 2. Nice recovery from Craig Capaldi to take the lead back. Ashley, this is the first time we're seeing Will Lucas have to go wheel to wheel with a competitor in the race. I feel like this is a big learning moment for him.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely gave it a good shot there in turn 1. I think if he might have stayed a little bit wider and tried to control Capaldi's turn-in point, he might have been able to make that stick. But the problem is once you get into turn 2, you have to be in the lead at that point, because now you're just sort of stuck behind whoever's ahead of you all the way down into turn 11.
He's still very, very close. This is not over. I think Lucas might look for something coming down into turn 11, but this could also compromise him down the back straight. And again, a nice cutback from Craig Capaldi. There's all that experience from the 68 really showing itself to Will Lucas, who is still cutting his teeth.
It was almost an identical move that we saw down there at 11 that we saw in 1. So I think just kind of the newness of this racetrack is really showing for Will Lucas right now. You can't cheat over on those entries. Like we heard Ashley say, I firmly believe that if he had kind of not crept it over towards turn number 1 and kind of forced Craig outside on the racetrack, probably would be sitting in the lead right now. And then we kind of saw it again down there in 11. Just got a little bit too greedy on the first half of the corner.
This is very common of Formula One racetracks. They try to make the track really wide on the entry of these brake zones to encourage passing. So visually, if your eyes move to the apex too early, your hands will follow and start to creep to that apex a little too early. So this is a good learning lesson for him. Hopefully this time around when he tries to make a pass in these corners, he stays a little wider, a little longer, and gets that better exit coming out.
We'll see if he's close enough to try and do something, because it seems he's a few 2 car lengths back to try and attack at least here, although he's strong coming into Andretti. If he gets the launch off of here, oh, this is looking closer. Not sure if it'll offer him an opportunity up into Big Red. But let's watch. He seems to think so, as he's going to size up his rival and then reconsider.
Let's see about the exit, though, because Craig was unfazed going into that brake marker, and Will looks pretty nice and tidy on that exit. Now, this is the other thing, right? We're only about halfway through this race. We've talked about the ambient temperatures. The Yokohama tires are incredible in these conditions, but with how heavy these race cars are, these drivers still have to manage those grip levels. Where do you choose to really take that grip out of the tire? Where are you going to use that aggression to make those moves to potentially grab the lead? Will Lucas is all figuring it out right now.
Certainly getting some lessons I'm pretty sure he will remember. And we, of course, have a race tomorrow. Should have all but one of these drivers back, as the Parnelli Cup will see the likes of Cochran handed over to his teammate, of course. But right now, oh, there's another one down into turn 11. And it's the same thing as before, but it does look a little bit stronger this time.
The problem, though, is that Craig Capaldi was able to do that over-under, and even if it is a drag race down into this turn number 12 brake zone, he is going to have the inside line. Will Lucas is going to have to force this issue. They are door-to-door down the back straightaway. Who can go later on the brakes? Will seems to push it just that little bit farther. Can he turn it in? That white Mustang is right in the way on the racing line. Seems like Will has secured the lead.
What is more awesome than seeing a pair of muscle cars drag race down a kilometer-long stretch here in Texas? But Will Lucas will take the lead away. Capaldi now the one on the back foot after leading for the majority of this race.
So Craig has got to pick it all up now and see if he can hang on the back of this number 34 car. He has set the pace all race long, but I was actually noticing the fastest race lap is Craig Capaldi, a 2:23.98. So if he can kind of keep that performance gap in the car, he's not going to let Will Lucas run away.
Interesting to note that because of the battling, Buell was a little bit quicker than them the last couple laps, but I just think he lost too much time. You could see the gap up on the screen there is about 8.7 seconds. He didn't really get a chance to try and show himself as a factor in this one. So now we see Lucas freed up. Obviously that last lap won't be a good read, but with him in clear air, will that purple fastest lap marker suddenly go to him?
And quite honestly, I don't blame that move down the front straightaway. You saw him kind of move directly in the middle of the racetrack. And remember, he's been following that incredibly hot Dark Horse R, that white number 68 all race long. So it's turn to try to throw up some of that heat in the face of Capaldi.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be glad to finally have that clean air in front of him. Just an open racetrack to really focus on his own race. And coming up into turn 7, 8, and then into 9, he's got himself already quite a few car lengths over Craig Capaldi. And Strauss and Cochran, thought I saw them swap positions there.
Yeah, I saw that John Strauss had caught Chase Cochran there and then eventually got by that number 4. So good little battle a little bit further back on the racetrack as we see our leader really start to set sail. I thought that Craig was going to be able to kind of keep touch with Will a little bit better here on this first lap where he's in clean air, but certainly seems like that number 34 has taken the notes and is applying them out here at COTA, and he's right back where he left off from about a month ago.
And that first sector was his personal best, 0.3 quicker. Now he's gone a purple second sector, so fastest of anybody this entire session, and that was 0.4 quicker. So that's already 0.7 difference in the first two sectors.
I was very impressed between our first couple of races back at NOLA Motorsports Park. So we're riding on board here with Chase Cochran chasing down John Strauss in that white number 14. You see the slipstream effect slowly bringing this bright green Dark Horse R a little bit closer to that back bumper. Let's see if an outbraking maneuver happens in turn number 12. You see the brake lights already on, a little bit deep there from Strauss. That's going to open the door for Cochran. He leaves plenty of room. Not sure if Strauss is still on the right side or if he secured that pass.
Looks like he's leaving a little bit of room to the inside as we continue to ride on board. Yep, there is a lane open there, but he doesn't need to anymore as the 4 is ahead. That was a nice little shake and bake from Chase Cochran.
And just as that pass happened, I noticed our leader set a new fastest lap of the race, 2:23.7. Compare that to Craig Capaldi's 2:24.2. I was very impressed in our opening rounds of the championship how much Will Lucas was learning by himself. Remember, he is not part of these multi-car teams like Capaldi Racing has out here. He is doing it all himself, and he was actually making changes between the Miles Cup race and into the Parnelli Cup race and got even faster. Well, guess what, Joe? We're already seeing that development here in race number 1 of the weekend.
Yeah, very much so. As we watch these two carry that battle on down the main straight. Once again, Strauss just scared off the line a little bit, outbraking himself. I think that was a defensive move a bit by the 4 coming into turn 1 just to try and prevent any funny stuff.
Just as we tick under 10 minutes plus 1 lap remaining here for this Miles Cup race. And you know, something else we can touch on here, Joe, is this bright green car who's locked in this battle because they not only compete in the Miles Cup race with one driver, but they also compete in the Parnelli Cup Championship with another driver.
Shane Griffin is going to be getting into this car, so he'll be listening to what Chase has to tell him after this race. Shane has said that he definitely chose Chase because he wanted to learn off of him and how quick he can be out on the circuit. So that's why they're running him first race of the weekend, so that he can really kind of give him the book to study afterwards.
And Ashley, you've dealt with plenty of teammates, co-drivers. How important is that mesh, that relay of information?
Oh, it's extremely important. And not only to have fast co-drivers or teammates, but like you said, to have drivers that also mesh with you. You guys have either the same personalities or you just get along really well. You learn the most that way if you're open-minded and if you share information, because ultimately you want to be fast as a whole. You want to succeed as a whole, especially on the same team. Ultimately, once you're on the track, you do want to race each other. You don't want to run into each other. No racing dirty, but in some ways, all bets are kind of off once you're on the track, but off the track, to learn from each other is honestly priceless.
Well, and I hope they like each other, because that's no, because that team is definitely one of the smaller outfits that we have in this series. It is just Chase, Shane, and their truck driver. That's it. That's running this whole shebang. And they do seem to get along pretty darn well. In fact, they're a lot of fun to hang around out in the paddock. But it seems like Will Lucas has still got that lead. And in fact, he's got that lead now by 5.5 seconds. That answers our question. He has just been pulling away. Another purple lap last time.
I was just about to point that out. 2 laps in a row in terms of the fastest lap of the race. Not the fastest lap in class, but the fastest lap out of any of these Dark Horse R's out on the racetrack right now. I think that this driver has a bright future ahead of him. I mean, we compete all year long here in the Mustang Cup race, and just like we heard Ford say, we want to see these drivers upgrade themselves into Mustang Challenge, upgrade themselves into these Mustang GT4 cars, and keep their career going.
They're definitely going to have a variety of tracks as well that they're going to be racing at. We mentioned NOLA, kind of a more flat circuit, a bit technical in its own way, but a lot more sweeping corners than what you have here, where there's so many slow turns and so much elevation change. And then, of course, later in the season, Road America, that's just all straights into heavy braking zones. And I also think to Lime Rock Park, which will be fascinating, a bull ring of a road course for these cars.
That'll be an interesting one, right? That's the one when the fenders are really going to come out, or at least in my experience, that's when the fenders usually come out, because passing can be incredibly tough around that bull ring of a racetrack. But we are here at Circuit of the Americas. We got to focus on this 20-turn FIA Grade 1 facility, just like how Will Lucas is, and it is extremely impressive. You had mentioned 5 seconds already. He's grown that this lap to nearly 7 seconds, and we're not even done with it.
I think this is going to be another fastest lap of the race. Did you mean to say the fenders come off when you're at that track?
The fenders come out, the elbows, they kind of get out a little bit more.
You didn't mean to say they come off the car.
No, they actually get dented a little bit.
Okay. You managed to keep them at least attached to it, so I'll give you that. But, yeah, there we go. Another lap by. And no, he does not set it the fastest lap of the race, but it was a 24.9, so it was still massively quick. Let's see what Capaldi puts down as we wait for him to cross. I think it was a 27.4, 2.5 seconds or thereabouts quicker just in that lap alone.
I think a lot of this comes down to the heat. We were talking about how hot it is this weekend in Texas. It is not easy inside these race cars, right? Let's say if it's 97 degrees ambient air temperature, which is pretty much what we have right here, it's going to be well into the triple digits. And I'd assume in these Dark Horse R's, maybe even 130 degrees inside the cockpit. So you need to stay hydrated. Ashley, you were talking about this a little bit earlier in the day. I mean, as soon as you hit mental fatigue and it's that hot, you're in bad news.
Yeah, hydration is definitely the number one thing as a driver to make sure you're maintaining, not just during the weekend, but really the hydration starts the week before your race weekend, because it takes time for your body to build up that fluid. And then once you're in the car, you are sweating all of it out. So some of these cars have a drink bottle inside the car, which is really helpful. However, it's really hard to rehydrate yourself once you start driving. So in these cars, it's 120, 130 degrees, and you're muscling these cars around, and you're just roasting at the same time. So it is super physical and super hot. And really the biggest part, like you said, is that mental fatigue, and that does come down to hydration.
You mentioned the drink bottle inside the race car, and I know it kind of gets often overlooked. Everybody reaches down for that cool shirt or the cool box system to turn it on, but it is so important to stay hydrated even inside the race car. And if you don't take a drink out of that drink bottle for a couple laps, you're going to find out how hot that water temperature actually is inside that little silicone tube. So you better keep it flowing.
Yeah, for sure. And I find a lot of drivers don't take those aids. They think, I don't need it, I'll be fine without it. However, driver comfort makes such a difference on the track. And even if it makes you 1/10 a lap faster, in the long run, it helps tremendously. So yeah, having that drink bottle is crucial. And for me, if I have one in my car, I'm taking a sip every lap, even if I think I don't need it. It's just kind of a habit for me, and it helps me refocus as well.
So a little over 3 minutes left across the line, plus one lap in this race. Imagine we're about 3 laps to go here for Will Lucas. Already up to now 9 seconds ahead across the line of Craig Capaldi, which I think really goes to show you how good of a job Craig was doing on playing defense for as many laps as he did.
Yeah, Will has really unleashed the pace once he got out into that clean air. I'm going to give some credit where credit is due as well to Cale Buell. He's laying down some lap times right now that is actually faster than our second place car of Craig Capaldi. Now, not very much time left in this race to kind of hunt down what is a 5.5 second gap, but it was nearly 7 seconds at one point. And as a driver, when you see that car in front, you have a reference point of that place in the racetrack. And when you come around next time and he's a little bit closer, same thing next lap, a little bit closer, it just gives you that little bit more motivation.
When I spoke to the team after the races at NOLA, one of the things they said was that they were impressed that Cale had only had track day experience, essentially. He had not raced competitively before and had showed himself to be very quick. And like we keep pointing out, is in a car, in an H pattern, on a racetrack, that's not easy to do if you're not experienced out there. So there's some real raw speed underneath the hood for the 8 car.
A lot of newer cars, they don't have H-pattern transmissions, right? They have sequential boxes or paddle shift boxes. And so, yes, an H-pattern is something that you probably have to learn if you've only got track day experience. And when you hop into a race car, everything is so raw. I guess that's good, and it can be bad if you miss a shift or, you're not too happy with those revs on the downshifts. It'll definitely let you know. But here at Circuit of the Americas, with these, you better get used to an H pattern. You're going to be going up and down that box quite a bit.
I'm kind of curious, so I'll have to ask the drivers if they know how many times a lap they have to shift around here, because I'm sure it is a lot. Maybe get some of the athletic tape on your hands so that you don't get blisters by the end of it.
Well, and at our first couple races of the year, they were primarily using 3rd and 4th gear at the racetrack that we were at NOLA Motorsports Park. But here at COTA, we saw them 2nd gear several times throughout this racetrack, and then also up to 5th gear here on the front straightaway. So they are using that entire gearbox.
2 laps to go now for the 34 car leading this race, having taken the lead away with about 15 minutes left on the clock, maybe a little bit less than that, and has been in control ever since. I was trying to see if we have anybody close to one another farther down the order. Looks like really the only one that's near at this stage is Cochran and Strauss, and Cochran's got himself still at about 4 seconds over John.
I was thinking that maybe Cale was going to be able to ramp it up that little bit more, but I think that Craig Capaldi has actually responded. His last lap was in a 2:25. That was much better than what he's done the previous couple laps. And Ashley, that can be difficult to do, especially if you are struggling with the heat, to regain that performance.
No, absolutely. these conditions are just super challenging, and this track is really busy, so you don't really have much time to rest your brain, maybe on the back straightaway, but at the same time, you don't really want to relax. And that I was going to actually say with Lucas, even though he has a pretty decent lead, what I like to see from him is that he's super consistent, and he's still hitting his marks lap after lap and treating it as if there is a car right behind fighting him for the lead.
I think from what we could recall, it was close to half a minute difference at the line in race number 2 at NOLA Motorsports Park. So yeah, Lucas, he doesn't just sit and bring it home. He drives it.
And I'm also curious because we've got the qualifying for the Parnelli Cup race, of course, that's going to go on tomorrow. So how much is Will actually learning out on the racetrack right now? In practice, you typically go out there, run a few laps, you might come back in, make some changes. So this is an opportunity for the driver to experience that full 30-minute plus, see what the race car is actually doing from the beginning of the race, the middle of the race, and then also the end of the race. Like I said, they made changes in between the Miles Cup race and the Parnelli Cup race at NOLA Motorsports Park. I would expect the same, but then can he grab that overall pole position like we saw Craig Capaldi do earlier today?
Exactly, because that overall pole position is worth a bonus point, which means he got a perfect score as the white flag comes out at NOLA for both the Miles Cup and the Parnelli Cup, but is not going to get a perfect score, at least for the Miles Cup this weekend, as that one is going to go to Capaldi. Just one lap left. Will Lucas needs all of 19 corners to go.
The gaps are slowly kind of gradually getting bigger between Lucas and Capaldi. Same thing with Capaldi and Buell. So it does look like Craig has kind of found the performance back again in that white number 68 as we keep our eyes on the leader. This is the final lap for him. Just got to make it through this S section of Sector 1 that blends into Sector 2 right about here. I haven't really seen Will make any mistakes. We've seen some little slides out of the car, really kind of pushing the limits of the traction, trying to get around Craig, trying to find that clean air. But in terms of mistakes, it seems pretty clean.
Well, I wonder if that's one of the major parts of why we've seen him be so dominant, is that what few mistakes he does make, he seems to either correct them quickly or not let them affect his speed or his focus as he comes down the backstretch for the last time in the Miles Cup race this weekend. A gap at 9 seconds the last time we saw them cross the timing line here on this track. Craig Capaldi did his best, but Lucas not going to be denied, at least for the Saturday race.
Through the brake zone of turn number 12 and up to the slowest section of this racetrack. Just got to tiptoe your way through one more time. You see nice and on that red and white curb. Doesn't even let the car drift out all the way because you got to be able to put all of that power from that V8 to the ground. Same thing here in turn number 15. Just barely grazes that apex curb a little bit wider over the exit, and now let the car kind of do its thing here in this long sweeping right-hander.
Just a couple corners to go for Will Lucas. He opened himself up with a win at NOLA for the Miles Cup and did so with a great amount of speed, having to fend off Craig Capaldi. This time it gets reversed. He has to attack Craig Capaldi, and he comes away the victor as Will Lucas will win at Circuit of the Americas.
Beautiful race from that number 34, able to capture another checkered flag, and we'll see Craig Capaldi in this white number 68 round, turn number 20. He will be your winner in the Dark Horse Legends category.
Fantastic stuff. Cale Buell not that far behind, obviously very pleased with a second place in the Dark Horse category here in Mustang Cup. Third overall as well, and within 7 seconds of the next one up, Craig Capaldi. We're waiting for Cochran, who will be the last step on the podium in that Dark Horse category, but it's certainly, wow, yeah, 46 seconds away from the leader, so we're sitting for a moment. There he is.
Yeah, there comes Chase in that bright green car. Of course, his teammate Shane is going to be driving it tomorrow in that Parnelli Cup race, waiting for the red Walter Bobco car. That's the number 98 that's going to be crossing the line second in that Legends category. And I believe that John Strauss has actually fallen down to what is 6th place.
Yeah, I was just wondering that. I realized when did Bobco get into P2 in the Dark Horse Legends? Strauss finishing on the podium still, but going to be disappointed in himself as he was a couple positions higher up. Nick Smither and Andrew Hordes going to be the last two to come home with this one. There we see Smither, and then Hordes, I think, a little ways back, but that solidifies things. So let's go through our finishing order, as it was Will Lucas, your overall winner, and your winner in your dark horse category. Craig Capaldi was P2. And then, of course, you've got Cale Buell finishing in third overall. Chase Cochran was fourth. Walter Bobko was fifth. And John Strauss was sixth. Nick Smither, P7. And Andrew Horge just coming across the line for eighth position. We'll be back in just a moment with our podium ceremonies here in the Mustang Cup. Don't go away.
It's hard to contain your excitement when you get something you've really wanted. Like the gold standard in automotive protection, WeatherTech floor liners. With deep sculpted channels and laser measured for total protection in the front, back, and even up the sides.
Dad, you're going viral.
What? WeatherTech me.
So don't be shy, enjoy. Order your premium American-made products at WeatherTech.com.
Whatever you drive, however you drive. AMSOIL specially engineers lubricants to maximize power, performance, and protection in your vehicles, so you can work hard and play hard with confidence. Order online at amsoil.com.